Judy Garland. Judy Garland's fall from grace was as public as her meteoric rise. In the late 1930s, she was the face of MGM's golden promise, but behind the curtain lay a narrative soaked in exploitation. Handed amphetamines as a teenager to sustain grueling shooting schedules, Garland's life spiraled into substance dependence. By the early 1950s, her contracts were in ruins, her voice faltering, and Hollywood turned its back. What few know is that Garland was deemed uninsurable by studios, a death sentence in the industry. Yet, in 1954, she roared back in A Star Is Born, a raw, unfiltered performance mirroring her personal agony. The industry, however, wasn't ready for a comeback this bold. Garland was denied an Oscar win despite critical acclaim, a slap echoing louder than applause. Still, she proved something far more lasting. Hollywood couldn't erase her, only underestimate her power. The next figure faced a different form of sabotage, one even more insidious. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was never just an actress, she was a force. By the mid-1930s, she redefined female power on screen, unafraid to play complex, morally ambiguous roles. But by the late 1940s, that fire dimmed. Studios accused her of being difficult. Projects dried up. What audiences rarely saw was how Davis had fought Warner Brothers in a landmark contract battle, defying the studio system's grip over actors' careers. The gamble left her career in shambles. Then, in 1950, she emerged from obscurity in All About Eve, her eyes sharper, her presence more commanding. The role of Margot Channing wasn't a performance. It was Davis exposing her own struggles with ageism and rejection. Her career rebirth was poetic justice, but Hollywood's whispers never ceased. Davis remained defiant, proving success wasn't a studio gift, but a battle scar. The next comeback story reveals a fall so severe it seemed impossible to recover from. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson ruled silent cinema, a goddess draped in pearls and mystique. But with the arrival of sound in the late 1920s, her empire collapsed. Studios believed her voice, sophisticated and theatrical, wouldn't translate to the new era. By the 1930s, Swanson was bankrupt, reduced to minor stage roles while her contemporaries flourished. What history often overlooks is how she refused to fade. Swanson shifted to business ventures, even launching her own fashion line. Then, in 1950, she shattered expectations with Sunset Boulevard. Her role as Norma Desmond wasn't just art imitating life, it was a brutal reflection of her own fall from stardom. Swanson wasn't just acting, she was reclaiming her legacy. Yet even with that triumphant return, she was overlooked by the Academy. Her brilliance defied the industry's limited imagination. The next story reveals a tragedy that unfolded just as the cameras stopped rolling. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was the dream. Discovered as a teenager in 1936, she became MGM's ultimate bombshell. But the glamour was an illusion, masking a life drenched in chaos. Scandals swirled, but nothing compared to the headlines of 1958. Her teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, lost her life in a violent incident at the hands of Lana's abusive lover, Johnny Stompanato. The scandal was more than tabloid fodder. It threatened to destroy Turner's career entirely. Studios distanced themselves, fearing the public would never separate the icon from the tragedy. Yet, Turner defied the narrative. Months later, she returned in Imitation of Life, a film echoing themes of maternal pain and redemption. Audiences didn't just watch, they felt her anguish. Turner's real-life trauma became her most authentic performance. But what many never knew was the emotional toll. Turner never truly forgave herself. Redemption, however, isn't always enough. The next legend would learn this in the most painful way possible. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was more than Hollywood's favorite fantasy. She was a symbol of reinvention. Born Margarita Cancino, she was transformed by Columbia Pictures into the ultimate American star, her natural Hispanic heritage erased as studios altered her name, lightened her hair, and reshaped her hairline. Behind the allure, her personal life crumbled. Multiple failed marriages, including a headline-grabbing union with Prince Ali Khan, fueled the tabloids. But by the early 1950s, the scandals overshadowed her talent. Then came Pal Joey in 1957, a career-saving moment. She returned to the screen opposite Frank Sinatra, captivating audiences once again with a magnetic performance that reminded the world of her raw talent. Yet, her most profound battle was invisible. Struggling with early signs of Alzheimer's disease, a condition poorly understood at the time, she was mischaracterized as a recluse with a drinking problem. Even as her memory faded, her legacy endured, and she became a public face for Alzheimer's awareness later in life. The next story reveals another star whose comeback shattered the illusions Hollywood tried to impose. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. Rising to international fame in The Blue Angel in 1930, her smoldering gaze and androgynous style set her apart as one of the most daring actresses of her time. But as World War II raged, Dietrich made a choice few dared. She renounced her German citizenship and openly supported the Allied forces, performing for troops on the front lines despite receiving death threats and being branded a traitor in her homeland. This defiance, however, cost her professionally. By the late 1940s, her film roles dwindled, and she was labeled box office poison. Yet Dietrich's resilience was unmatched. Reinventing herself in the 1950s, she became a cabaret sensation, mesmerizing audiences with sultry, stripped-down musical performances across Europe and Las Vegas. The transformation was profound. She no longer played a role, but bared her true self. Still, behind the glamour, she struggled with chronic pain and substance dependence, a secret the press never fully exposed. The next legend's downfall would be even more sensational. Clara Bow. Clara Bow didn't just define the jazz age, she embodied it. As the original it girl of silent cinema, she captured hearts with her daring performances in the 1920s. But behind the fame lay a darker truth. Bow came from extreme poverty and an abusive household, haunted by her mother's mental illness and a father who exploited her success. Her meteoric rise was just as swift as her downfall. With the advent of sound, rumors spread that her Brooklyn accent was unfit for talkies, a myth perpetuated by jealous rivals and an unforgiving press. By the early 1930s, a scandal involving stolen letters and salacious rumors left her career in tatters. Yet Bow found her redemption not on screen, but in personal triumph. She retreated from the spotlight, prioritizing her mental health and finding peace in ranch life far from Hollywood's glare. Though her career never fully reignited, her legacy as a silent era icon outlasted the whispers. The next comeback story would face a different kind of professional exile. Mae West. Mae West was never meant to blend in. A provocateur from the start, her sharp wit and unapologetic sensuality made her both a star and a target. By the early 1930s, films like She Done Him Wrong made her one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. But West's refusal to conform to censorship standards during the Hays Code era led to her downfall. Studio heads blacklisted her for roles deemed too risque, and by the late 1930s, she had all but disappeared from the screen. What few remember is her audacious return in Myra Breckinridge in 1970, a camp masterpiece where West reclaimed her power, draped in diamonds and delivering double entendres sharper than ever. Though the film was critically panned, it reignited public fascination with her persona. West's refusal to let Hollywood silence her proved that some icons can only be dimmed, never extinguished. The next star, however, was consumed not by controversy, but by personal demons. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the very image of swashbuckling heroism until the mask slipped. Rising to fame in Captain Blood in 1935, He defined the action-adventure genre. But Flynn's private life was marred by excess. Alcohol struggles, multiple affairs, and a highly publicized legal trial in 1943 involving serious accusations severely damaged his once pristine image. Though he was acquitted, the damage was irreversible. Flynn spiraled further into alcohol dependency, his career in ruins by the late 1940s. Then came an unexpected turn. Cast in the Sun also rises in 1957. Flynn's performance as the broken alcoholic Mike Campbell mirrored his own pain, earning praise for its raw vulnerability. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a self-reckoning. Though his health rapidly declined afterward, Flynn's final years revealed a tragic complexity behind the bravado. The next star's redemption came not from facing personal scandal, but from defying the industry's expectations of age. Lauren Bacall. Lauren Bacall's story wasn't just about survival. It was about commanding respect. Exploding onto the scene in films such as To Have and Have Not in 1944, her deep voice and smoldering gaze created an unforgettable pairing with Humphrey Bogart, both on and off screen. But after Bogart's death in 1957, Hollywood seemed to lose interest. Bacall was labeled difficult for refusing cliched roles offered to aging actresses. Then came her stage triumph in Applause in 1970, a Broadway adaptation of All About Eve. The performance earned her a Tony Award and reminded the world of her versatility beyond the silver screen. Bacall didn't just return, she redefined her career on her terms, later earning an Academy Award nomination for The Mirror Has Two Faces in 1996. Her defiance of Hollywood's ageism marked her not just as a comeback story, but as a figure of artistic integrity. The next comeback involves a star whose scandals overshadowed his talent entirely. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum's rugged charisma made him a leading man of the 40s, but his fall came as swiftly as his rise. By the late 1940s, his tough guy persona was cemented in classics like Out of the Past, but his personal life was far darker. In 1948, Mitchum faced legal complications related to possession of substances, a career-killing scandal during Hollywood's puritanical post-war years. Studios distanced themselves, and his reputation seemed irreparable. What few knew was how Mitchum refused to bow to the scandal machine. Instead of denying the charges, he leaned into his rebellious image, a bold move for the era. Against all odds, RKO Pictures gambled on him again, casting him in The Big Steal, a box office hit that defied expectations. Mitchum didn't just return, he rebranded himself as the ultimate anti-hero, reshaping Hollywood's leading man archetype. His career resurgence proved that defiance, when wielded with authenticity, could rewrite a public narrative. The next comeback wasn't fueled by scandal, but by a personal battle with inner demons. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney was the embodiment of classic beauty, but her story held a haunting undercurrent. By the early 1940s, she had cemented herself as a star with Laura and Leave Her to Heaven, her icy elegance captivating audiences. Yet, behind the perfection lay profound tragedy. In 1943, Tierney contracted rubella during pregnancy after meeting a fan who had broken quarantine to see her. The result was devastating. Her daughter was born deaf and intellectually disabled. The guilt consumed Tierney, and by the mid-50s, her mental health crumbled. Diagnosed with severe depression, she underwent electroshock therapy, a controversial treatment that left her memory fractured. Hollywood, unkind as ever, labeled her unstable and moved on. But Tierney refused to be forgotten. In 1962, she made a powerful return in Advise and Consent, a quieter but poignant performance that proved she was still capable of captivating the screen. Her journey from grief to artistic revival remains a testament to personal strength. The next star's downfall would unfold at the height of her fame. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow wasn't just Hollywood's original platinum blonde. She was a phenomenon. By the mid-1930s, her roles in Dinner at 8 and Red Dust made her a global sensation, blending humor with magnetic sensuality. But beneath the dazzling exterior, her life was marred by personal loss and scandal. In 1932, her husband Paul Byrne died in what was rumored to be a bizarre, self-inflicted death, with whispers of foul play damaging her image. Yet, it wasn't this tragedy, but her sudden decline in health that would shock the world. In 1937, while filming Saratoga, Harlow collapsed on set, her body weakened by undiagnosed kidney failure. Doctors misdiagnosed her symptoms as influenza, and within weeks, she was gone at just 26. While she never had the chance for a personal comeback, her legacy endured. Her unfinished role in Saratoga was completed using body doubles and became the year's highest-grossing film, preserving her stardom beyond her untimely death. The next star, however, reclaimed her legacy not through tragedy, but transformation. Dolores Del Rio. Dolores Del Rio was more than a screen beauty. She was a trailblazer. Born in Mexico, she became one of the first Latina stars in Hollywood, rising to fame in the silent era with roles in Ramona and Evangeline. Yet, as sound cinema took over in the 1930s, racial typecasting and shifting industry standards pushed her into obscurity. What's rarely acknowledged is that Del Rio refused to conform. Rather than accept roles that demeaned her heritage, she returned to Mexico and helped ignite the golden age of Mexican cinema. Her performance in Maria Candelaria in 1943 redefined her legacy, earning global acclaim and winning the Grand Prix at Cannes. When Hollywood came calling again, Del Rio returned on her own terms, starring in The Fugitive and Cheyenne Autumn, refusing to play stereotypes. Her comeback wasn't just personal, it was a cultural reclamation of identity and dignity. The next figure's return to fame would come decades after her initial stardom, in the most unexpected way imaginable. Gloria Stewart. Gloria Stewart's career seemed sealed in the past, a relic of the 1930s. She was a rising star in pre-code Hollywood, with roles in The Invisible Man and Gold Diggers of 1935. But by the early 40s, her career faded into obscurity. The industry moved on, and so did Stewart. She became a painter, believing her acting days were long behind her. But then came the unlikeliest of returns. In 1997, at 87 years old, Stewart was cast as the elderly Rose in Titanic, a role that shattered industry norms. Not only did her performance captivate audiences worldwide, but it also earned her an Academy Award nomination, the oldest nominee for Best Supporting Actress at the time. Stewart's return wasn't just a career revival, it was a statement that talent has no expiration date. Her defiance of Hollywood's obsession with youth made her story a triumph that continues to inspire. The next name in this lineup faced a far more tumultuous relationship with fame. Ginger Rogers. Ginger Rogers was more than Fred Astaire's iconic dance partner. She was a star in her own right. Rising to fame during the Great Depression, she dazzled audiences in musicals like Top Hat and Swing Time, becoming synonymous with elegance and precision. But what many don't realize is how quickly Hollywood tried to sideline her once the musical craze subsided in the early 40s. Studios doubted her ability to carry dramatic roles, branding her as a dancer first, actress second. Refusing to be typecast, Rogers fought for roles that would prove her range. In 1940, she delivered a groundbreaking performance in Kitty Foyle, shedding her glamorous image and winning the Academy Award for Best Actress. Yet, even after that triumph, she was gradually phased out by younger stars. Undeterred, Rogers pivoted to the stage, achieving Broadway success in Hello, Dolly during the late 60s, reminding the industry of her enduring talent. The next name on this list defied even greater odds when the studio system tried to write her off entirely. Claudette Colbert. Claudette Colbert was once one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, winning an Academy Award for It Happened One Night in 1934. Her elegance and wit made her a box office favorite, yet by the early 50s, she faced the inevitable decline most actresses of her era experienced: ageism. What few remember is that Colbert suffered a severe back injury while filming Three Came Home in 1950, which not only limited her physically but led studios to consider her a liability. Roles disappeared almost overnight. But Colbert wasn't done yet. After nearly a decade away from the screen, she re-emerged not in film, but in television, a medium many stars resisted. Her Emmy-winning role in The Two Mrs. Grenvilles in 1987 wasn't just a comeback. It was a career reinvention. At 74, she delivered a performance so compelling it reminded Hollywood of what they'd lost. The next actress, however, never feared controversy. She practically invited it, becoming a legend for her rebellious spirit. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead lived as loudly off-screen as she did on it. Known for her deep voice and unconventional lifestyle, she was a sensation during the silent era, but her outspoken nature and defiance of Hollywood norms cost her dearly. By the mid-30s, her career was in freefall, rumors of alcohol abuse, and her open bisexuality making her a target of the rigid studio system. The shocking part? Bankhead refused to apologize. Instead, she left Hollywood entirely, conquering the theater world with raw, fearless performances. Then came her defining comeback, Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat in 1944. Cast as a spoiled socialite trapped at sea, Bankhead delivered a masterclass in complex vulnerability, earning widespread acclaim. Yet even then, the press focused more on her off-screen antics than her acting prowess. Bankhead's story remains a reminder that Hollywood often punishes those who refuse to conform. The next actress, however, mastered the art of reinvention, shifting from ingenue to powerhouse with subtle defiance. Loretta Young. Loretta Young was the embodiment of grace and glamour, rising to fame in the early 1930s with her radiant beauty and delicate presence. Yet, behind the image lay a complex story. In 1935, Young had a secret affair with Clark Gable, resulting in a daughter whose paternity was hidden for decades. The cover-up was so meticulously orchestrated that Young even staged an adoption to protect her career from scandal. As the studio system tightened its grip on personal lives, Young seemed destined to fade. But she defied expectations in the early 50s with The Loretta Young Show, a groundbreaking television series where she wasn't just the star, but also the producer, an extraordinary feat for a woman at the time. The show's success proved she was more than a screen beauty. She was a business-savvy pioneer controlling her own narrative. The next actress on this list, however, rose to fame in a different era and battled an even more personal tragedy to reclaim her career. Janet Gaynor. Janet Gaynor wasn't just the first ever winner of the Academy Award for Best Actress, she was Hollywood royalty during the silent and early sound eras. By the late 30s, she had seemingly retired at the peak of her career, focusing on marriage and motherhood instead. But what many forget is the tragedy that forced her back into the public eye. In 1982, Gaynor survived a horrific car accident that killed her husband and left her critically injured. Despite the physical and emotional trauma, Gaynor didn't retreat. Instead, she returned to the stage, performing in Harold and Maude in the early 80s, reminding audiences of her quiet brilliance. Though her screen days were long behind her, this comeback was less about fame and more about personal resilience. Gaynor showed the world that artistry can endure even after unimaginable loss. The next figure, however, would find redemption not through personal tragedy, but by defying the very system that once discarded her. Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard redefined comedic brilliance during the Golden Age. Her sharp wit and impeccable timing made her a box office sensation in the early 1930s. But Lombard wasn't merely a screen beauty, she was a trailblazer. She commanded equal pay alongside her male co-stars, a bold move for her era. Yet, tragedy struck at the height of her fame. In January 1942, Lombard died in a devastating plane crash while returning from a World War II Bond tour. What's rarely discussed is how she had insisted on completing the war effort despite security warnings, showcasing her unwavering patriotism. Though her life ended abruptly, her influence didn't. Lombard's legacy inspired generations of comedic actresses, with posthumous tributes flooding the industry for years. She became a symbol of both humor and heroism, proving impact isn't limited by lifespan. The next star, however, faced career sabotage not from tragedy, but from the industry's shifting standards. Joan Leslie. Joan Leslie was the fresh-faced ingenue who charmed audiences during the 40s in films like Yankee Doodle Dandy and Sergeant York. But behind her wholesome image, Leslie was quietly fighting a career battle that would nearly end her Hollywood story. By the late 40s, Warner Brothers began pressuring her into increasingly exploitative roles. When Leslie refused to comply, the studio blacklisted her, effectively cutting off her access to top-tier projects. What few realize is how Leslie fought back with dignity. She took the studio to court, an almost unheard-of move for a young actress, and won her freedom from a restrictive contract. Though her film career never fully recovered, Leslie reinvented herself on television in the 50s and 60s, proving her talent transcended the silver screen. Her courage in standing up to studio control laid groundwork for future contract reforms. The next actress, however, endured a far more complex fall from grace, one entangled in the very industry that once celebrated her. Louise Reiner. Louise Reiner was once the face of unparalleled success. The first performer to win back-to-back Academy Awards for The Great Ziegfeld in 1936 and The Good Earth in 1937. Yet her meteoric rise was matched only by her dramatic fall. Reiner's refusal to conform to the studio's manufactured star persona led to MGM sidelining her almost overnight. She was labeled too European, too intellectual, a narrative carefully crafted to justify her exclusion from lead roles. What's less known is how she defied the system. She walked away from Hollywood entirely, choosing creative fulfillment over fame. After decades in obscurity, Reiner made a triumphant return in the 80s, captivating audiences with guest roles on The Love Boat and The Gambler. Her comeback wasn't about reclaiming former glory, but about demonstrating artistic longevity. She proved talent can outlast trends. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.